Welcome to the Geek Geek podcast where themes are cool. I'm Void and I'm here with my co-host Beej.
Well, it's like symbolism, and then you have themes, and not English class. Sorry,
Not English class. No. Today I want to talk about yearly themes, which is almost like yearly resolutions, but not. It's not a New Year's resolution, which is why I almost talked about it at the beginning of the year, and then we said, no, let's wait a couple months, and it's been a few months now.
Yeah, to really see how it played out, because you were really kind of taking off with this idea and running. So it's not something that you really can talk about in January to say how it's actually playing out. So now that we're almost halfway through the year, which sounds absolutely crazy, we thought we would check in and really just see how it's going for you.
Yeah, and this is something that I got from like the Cortex podcast and from CGP Grey. It's not my unique idea, so I want to put that out there up front. But CGP Grey has this amazing YouTube video on it. So if you're interested and you want to see another way of looking at it and kind of just a quick breakdown, I would direct you to that. If you just search for CGP Grey yearly theme, I'm sure it will show up. Otherwise, the Cortex podcast is another really good place. So
yeah, that video that you sent, I really liked. All of it makes sense to do it this way. Like, this makes a lot more sense in terms of letting yourself down kind of stuff, where you're not setting yourself up for disaster in a lot of ways that people do.
Yeah, and this is one of those things where last year I thought a lot about it, like in January when it came around. And I just wasn't in the right headspace, or I wasn't feeling up to it, and we were just about to buy a house, and there was a lot going on. So I thought about it a lot, but I didn't do anything. And so this year it came around again to like January, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna try it this year. I'm gonna set a yearly theme. So the idea here is that instead of doing a New Year's resolution, you set a theme for your year. And the general high-level idea of this is that goals are not very adaptable. Themes can be extremely adaptable. And you feel really bad when you fail a goal, because really with most goals, there's two states. There's either success or failure, right? There's not really an in-between. So if your goal is like, I'm going to lose 20 pounds, either you haven't done it or you have done it. And, things like that, where if you set yourself up for, I'm going to exercise 7 days a week, the first time that you go down to 6 days in a week, you're like, well, I'm failed. There's my whole resolution out the window. Yep. Whereas with a theme, you can pick something that works for you and resonates with you, and you can adapt it depending on how your year goes. And like in a year like this, where there's a global pandemic that none of us knew was coming, being able to adapt it and change things on the fly is a huge thing that's going for this.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I've never been a big fan of New Year's resolutions anyway, of just the idea of resolutions, the way that people tend to handle them, because you really do either set yourself up for like abject failure, like kind of like I did. It's like, I'm going to train and run a marathon, which wasn't a New Year's resolution, but it was kind of happened at the same time, where I just straight up didn't do it. Like, I got sick, I got lazy, and missed my race. And then there are things like where you're too general, like, I'm going to eat better. And then it's like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean anything, or, exercise more. And it's like, if you do a couple of push-ups during the day once a week, that's probably more than before. So it's like, you need to still be specific about things, because most of us handle these kinds of goals and resolutions in the wrong way.
Yeah, and if you had done something like using some of the examples you just put out there, you could have like a year of exercise, and maybe you start that and it's like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon. And then when you realize that's not going to happen, it's like, okay, well, how am I going to change this, right? Maybe I'll just emphasize running more. Maybe I'll do a different exercise I haven't done. Maybe I'll try to lift weights. Like, you can adapt it, and it's something that is riding the line between specificity and generality, so that you have room to play, but it's still a direction to take you as you come to these choices throughout your year. And this is kind of what, the video lays out, is you come to all of these choices all the time, right? Branching paths. And sometimes it's just about taking the one that's like slightly more towards what you're working on, and it doesn't have to be a gigantic adjustment. So I like that idea too. So when you're doing one like this, instead of setting a very hard concrete goal, right, for like a New Year's resolution, you're going to do X, Y, or Z. The thing that you do is you say, I'm going to go for a year of blank, and you fill in the blank. And the key is that you want something that resonates with you, right? Like my example just now, like year of exercise, like that could work for somebody.
Right.
For me this year, I wanted 2020 to be like a year of wellness because that was something that really resonated with me and I knew what I meant by it. And that's the only thing that matters. It doesn't really matter what somebody else would interpret that as. It's like, I know what I'm going for there, and all the subcategories that I might kind of turn the dials up on, turn the dials down on, try different things out. I know that like my mom has done this too because she listens to some of the same podcasts and watches some of the same YouTube stuff that I'm doing or that I watch, and she's doing a year of transition this year, and what that means for her. I know that my brother is doing something similar. He's trying to do a year of art where he's exploring art in a bunch of different ways, and so the key is you pick a word that resonates with you and know that you can morph it in whatever way works for you, but you know what you mean by it. And that's kind of the key. And thinking back retroactively, if I had done this my last few years, and this is probably why I wasn't doing it, was that like 2017 and honestly even the 5 years before that would have just been the years of survival, like just trying to get through and just like stay on my feet and like keep my kids alive and like bring in enough money that like we're not going to go destitute. And because I lost my job, I became a freelancer kind of by accident. I was running my own business that I never intended to do, and somehow I was supporting a family of 4. It was survival. Like that's the mode that I was in for years. And then, 2018 and kind of maybe to a little bit of extent, 2019 probably would have been just like the year of productivity or like the year of career, where I finally felt like I had a career path. I know where I was going with it. I just need to work on that and like be super productive and like would step forward in my career while also building the company that I'm part of and building the team that I'm in charge of and all of that kind of thing, right? So retroactively, I see what they could have been, and I could have done them, but it was just, it was a little overwhelming at the time. So this is the first year where I really have like mental capacity. The other thing is that like 2019 could have just been the year of, oh my God, new house. Like last year was just, there's so much, right? Anytime you like get a new house or you move, there's just so much that goes into that.
It is so insane. Like we moved into this house 5 years ago, and a little over 5 years ago now, and there's still stuff that we had intended to do early on that has not been done just because of life and things that come up. That it always seems like such an easy thing. Oh, I'm just going to move and go. It's not going to be a huge thing after the first couple of months. It's like, oh, I still need to take care of that. There's always something to do when you are dealing with homes and real estate.
Yeah, and you could have a year coming up that's a year of, house improvement or finishing off house stuff or year of house, right? Like it can be general as anybody needs it to be. Year of house actually wouldn't be a bad one if you're in that situation.
And that's kind of where we are, that we are doing almost the house of the year of the house because we're locked into it. And we had already been thinking about doing some better things with working on our landscaping more, fixing some of the like drainage issues in the backyard and trying to do it aesthetically well. And this is kind of given us the impetus to do that we're moving forward. Our Italy trip got canceled. We were really planning on relaxing a lot this year and putting less pressure on us and really trying to focus in on like home life. So in a way, that's really what we're doing, and it was kind of forced on us after all.
Yeah. That's good. So see, you almost do have a yearly theme if you just roll with it. And maybe you will if we check in on this again later in the year. So year of wellness is kind of what I picked for myself this year. And the thought was if we talked about this at the beginning of the year, I was going to kind of state some of my intentions. We could check back later. But like you said, we're halfway through the year, so I can do both right now. So here's what I was thinking at the beginning of the year. I thought that year of wellness for me, kind of the main points, and this wasn't all inclusive, right? Wellness is a general frame of mind that you can tweak and adjust as you go on. But I wanted to exercise more. I wanted to be reading more. And reading, honestly, at this point can almost be its own sub-episode. I have a lot of thoughts after like putting that more in the forefront of my mind this year. I wanted to try yoga, which I had never really done, and maybe try to meditate again. I know that was very useful when I did it. I just never made it a habit. And then I wanted to, eat better and on a more consistent schedule. And I also wanted to like track my sleep to try to get better. I didn't want to set a goal of like, I need better sleep, but I know that there's room for improvement there. So I wanted to just track the data to see what I could get from that. And then maybe it would kind of reflect itself back into, sleep quality. So that was what I was thinking at the beginning of the year. And I think I've had some successes and some things I haven't touched yet and some things that I've adapted along the way. Are any of these the most interesting for you? I can dive into all of them, but I'm curious
actually
what
curious
you think.
I'm curious about tracking your sleep, because that's something I know so many people, like my boss is really into tracking his sleep. Some of my coworkers are too. And it's like, I don't care. Like, not that they're doing it, but it's like, I don't care about tracking my sleep. I don't see why that matters. And it's never been something, I've never had sleep issues either. So I'm really curious on why that is something very specific that so many people are looking at right now.
So for me, part of my thinking, and this is tracking my sleep, and it goes hand in hand with exercise and eating also, is that when I see data, I can't help but respond to it because I'm such a data-driven person. And I know that about myself, right? So I know that if all I can manage to do is start capturing data about habits, I will improve those habits just because I've looked at the data. And it's just part of who I am. So I got a sleep tracker app. I got and then I went back and I grabbed another like calorie in, calorie out, just calorie tracking app called Lose It, which I've used before. It's great. But I started using that again. And then I tried a couple exercise tracking apps and I realized that I didn't really need that. All I really needed to do was make sure I was logging it in Lose It, and then that would be enough for me. So between like Lose It and sleep tracking, so the sleep tracker that I use is Sleep Cycle Alarm Clock, and I try to do it every night. I'm pretty good. I would say I get it. Like if there's 30 days in a month, I probably remember to do it 28 out of those. There might be a day or two where I fall asleep by accident before I activate it. And there's an alarm clock in there that watches your sleep cycle. So I know some people like to track their sleep because you can tell the alarm to wake you up before a certain time, but at a good point in your sleep cycle, which is really cool, right? So you say like, okay, well, I need to be awake by 6 a.m. You give it a half-hour window, so it'll watch between 5:30 and 6 a.m. And whenever you are in your lightest sleep, that's when it will wake you up. So it's a much better way to wake up than having an alarm go off when you're in deep sleep, because that is very jarring and it takes you longer to like get up and get on with your day.
Right. Okay. See, that's something, like I said, that's something that's never really clicked with me one way or the other in terms of that. So you're not using a wearable at all. Like this is one of those where you like maybe put your phone under your pillow.
So the way that Sleep Cycle used to do it is put a phone under your pillow. Now they have the ability to do a wearable, but they also have, and this is why I ultimately went with it, they have an option where you can just aim your phone's microphone in your general direction and it'll figure it out. Like it just listens. It literally just listens to the audio in the room while you're asleep, and it knows when you're like moving and rolling over and snoring and any of that kind of stuff, or when you're actually deep asleep and not moving at all.
How does that work with your wife in the room too?
So it is really good at knowing if it's you or if it's somebody else, because it very quickly learns like how far away the sound is. And so it can tell the difference. And it's interesting because it's really good at it. The other thing it does is that if you have multiple people using it at the same time in the same room, it will figure that out based on the sounds in the room, and it will use that data to make sure that it separates the people even better. So my wife is not tracking her sleep, but if she were, it would sense that because we're on the same Wi-Fi network, and it would just be like, oh, okay, this one's this person, this one's the other person.
Wow, that's kind of nuts to me. I don't even understand how that technology works.
It's really cool. So I've done really good at tracking my sleep. That's one. And like I said, it kind of ties into exercise and eating better. So I started tracking basically just calories in, calories out with Lose It. And there's plenty of apps out there you can do. I just like that one because it's super simple. And I was getting good at being in a consistent, like intermittent fasting schedule that was working for me. That got totally thrown off from the pandemic. But I am tracking calories like every day. I've done it every day since the first of the year.
Nice.
And I think the eating better part is going pretty well. Like I've lost about 20 pounds and I'm starting to stabilize at this new weight. I'd still like to lose another 5 or so, but I don't need to do anything extreme at this point. Like I'm kind of where I was hoping to get.
That's fantastic. I'm really, really jealous of you being able to continue to lose weight during the pandemic that I kind of gave up. Like it's been just a mental thing for me. So I'm really impressed that you were able to do that. Like that's fantastic.
Well, it's interesting talking to people at work because it seems like nobody is the weight that they were when we all started working from home. People have either lost weight or gained weight because people are like, yeah, I'm going to exercise and get new habits. And that's kind of the direction I went. And there are other people that are just like, screw it. I'm stress eating, not worrying about it, whatever. I've heard both of those, and they're both very valid, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I'm a bad stress eater. Like, that's one of the things where, I used to be 300 pounds. There's a reason for that. And I've got to start working back in exercise into my routine that I really did fall completely out, where if I'd tried a year of wellness, like, I would actually still feel like a failure right now because of stopping everything completely because of stress and kind of the world at large.
Yeah, well, and that's one of those reasons why I started with tracking my eating is because I knew that if I looked at that, I would realize where I was having too many calories and that if I just got up and moved more, it would offset those calories and I would be fine. And this goes back to knowing the kind of person I am, right? Knowing that if I see the data in front of me, I see I'm over the calories for the day, I'm like, oh, I got to work out. And then once I do that enough, I'm just in a habit. So right. I feel like I've done pretty good at exercising. Mostly I'm working out like 6 to 7 days per week. The lowest I fell to was 5 days in 1 week where just stuff came up and I just couldn't get around to it. But if I average it out across these first like 4 months of the year, I'm probably at 6.5 days each week of exercising.
Like that is crazy impressive. That as far as we are into the year right now, that you have been able to maintain that with all of the just stuff. That everything has been nuts this year and all the changes, especially with 2 kids and a wife that works in the school system. So like that's nuts that just you were able to maintain that with everything around you going to pot.
Well, this is where one of the things about the adaptability comes in, right? Because if I had set this as like an actual New Year's resolution, it probably would have been exercise 6 days a week. And there was that week where I fell down to 5 days a week. And at that point, I would have failed my New Year's resolution. I would have been really frustrated and I would have been like, screw this. And I don't feel like that. Like, I feel like, yeah, I'm doing a good job, And the week where I only worked out 5 days that week, it was like, I still did 5 days and my week was insane and whatever, we'll just kind of flex because the whole idea of having a theme for the year is that you can flex it and just make it work for you. So,
I mean, this doesn't have to be things like wellness and stuff like that. Like you really have almost done 2 of these with your reading stuff that you took the idea that you had, and you did mention this being an episode on its own. I really think that would work well because you've upped the amount that you've read over the last couple of years exponentially already, just by kind of saying this is the year I'm going to do more of that, but not being a generic I'm going to read more, but purposefully working on including it in your schedule and making sure that was something that was important this year.
Yeah, and that's one where I feel a little mixed on it. So let me talk about the other success first, and then I'll get around to some of my, I don't want to say failures, but things that I haven't quite worked in yet, right? Because we're being flexible here. The other thing that worked for me was yoga, kinda. I tried a bunch of it, and what I learned was I like some of the yoga moves and I like incorporating them into my daily like exercise routine for stretches and for like warm up and cool down. What I don't like is to sit down or not sit down, but like, go and do half an hour of yoga or do an hour of yoga. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't hold my attention, but doing 7 minutes warm up, 7 minutes cool down, that kind of thing, those work for me. So I was able to incorporate that. So I feel like all of those things I talked about, I've done pretty well at adapting them, making them work for me, giving where I need to give and flexing where I need to flex, but kind of like making them into this year of wellness. The 2 where I'm mixed on are meditation and reading. So meditation, I feel like I gotta like try it again and figure out how it works into my schedule. And I just don't know where it fits because anytime you add something to your schedule, you have to take something else away because there's 24 hours in a day and you can't change that.
One of the things that about meditation that I've read, that because I've mentioned it before, the 10% happier thing has worked so well for me that when I've listened to it, read it, and just talked to anybody about it, listened to the podcast, one of the things that Dan Harris talks about is that that's just part of his morning routine in his office, is that while he's in his office that he can sit there. He has a chair, and there's about a 10-minute a time, like during his morning routine while he's in his office, he'll sit in a chair and get meditation in. And that's something, like, you're in an open office, I know, so it would have to be different, but that might be something, since I know that you get there a little bit before most of the other people, that might be possible to work in earbud. Obviously you're working with earbuds in anyway because you're an earbud fanatic, but it's you're just crazy about those headphones, and that might be something that you could do, is not necessarily make it part of your personal stuff, but in terms of making it part of work.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think for me. I mean, I get where you're coming from. I see how it could work for some people. When I tried meditation last year and found some success with it, I figured out quickly that the only time it works for me is when I'm completely alone. Like, if there's anybody else anywhere around me, and this probably goes back to me being an introvert and just being sensitive to all the things around me, and hyper aware of them. Like, even in bed at night, if my wife is asleep and not moving, like, that's still too much. It'll pull me out of meditation. The successes I had were like when everyone was out of my house, or I was completely alone on one floor of the house and nobody else was making noise on the other floors of the house. So that's part of my problem of finding a time to work that in, because my kids are always busy. They're always moving around, right? Like, I'm basically awake the hours that my wife is awake. So yeah, I don't know. I'm going to keep thinking about it. There's got to be a way to do it, but this is where the flexibility comes in.
And that'll teach you, as you do it, it'll teach you how to sit in discomfort like that. Like, it's one time, my favorite thing that's ever happened was my dog just came in, running in at me and started licking my face while I was sitting in the floor straight backed. And I didn't jump and scare. Like, I'd gotten so used to being able to hold it and deal with whatever was around that I didn't actually go nuts when my dog came in and licked my face. I was like, that's a success. Can't do that now, but while I was doing it very regularly in the floor, it was like, that was my big success, is I was able to completely maintain where I was breathing and not reacting to that kind of thing coming in.
That's cool. That's really cool.
It can happen. It just does. It take a lot of work. So I totally understand with kids. Man, my dog is nothing compared to having two kids running around.
Right. And this is one of the reasons that I chose Year of Wellness, and this is why it resonated with me, is because I knew I had 6 or 7 things kind of in the back of my head that I wanted to try to incorporate, and I knew they wouldn't all work. I just didn't know which ones would and which ones wouldn't stick. And if meditation is one that just doesn't work, it doesn't, and that kind of falls off for the year. But I've had these other things that have worked, so I feel really good about where I'm at.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And so the last thing was reading, right? And this is another one where it's been kind of mixed. I've kind of had success. I'm getting through more written content, but the way I've been doing it is listening to a lot more audiobooks. And that's good. I'm glad I'm taking in more, I don't know, I love podcasts, but written fiction, nonfiction, all of it, literature, it's just different when it's being read to you than a podcast is. So I'm glad that I'm getting that material and I'm absorbing it, but there's something about the act of sitting down and just reading and doing nothing else that is, I know it's good for my mind and I know that I love to do it, and I haven't done enough of it the last few years. So I feel like I'm still not doing very good at that. I haven't actually read a lot of books. I've listened to a lot of audiobooks, which, counts as reading in a way. But I didn't realize that I was going to have to make that distinction as I got into it. So this is one of the reasons that reading was just kind of on my list, but I didn't know what I meant by it. And this is where reading could almost be a whole episode that I mentioned, or maybe next year is the year of reading and I really dig into it and I figure out what that means for me.
Yeah. I mean, that is kind of a sub theme anyway for you. So it's good to be able to recognize all of that and work toward it again in the future, as a different kind of theme-ish goal.
Right. And, I've seen different people do themes different ways. You could do like a monthly theme, or not really monthly. That's probably too short. But you can do like quarterly, right? Like seasonal. Seasonal is probably better than quarterly. Quarterly is more business oriented. But you could do like, here's my theme for the season, and do 4 of them throughout the year. But yeah, yearly felt like the way to go at first. So I'd be very curious if anybody else is interested in doing this, and what you would pick, like what works for you, what resonates with you. So again, the key thing here, if you are interested, is that themes are supposed to be super adaptable and they are supposed to resonate with you. And if you get those 2 things right, it can work really, really well. So far, my first year of doing it is going well, and we're getting close to halfway.
That's one of it. Yeah. I don't even know. I had something to say about that, and just when you said it, that's something that resonates. It just kind of clicked, where it's like you can't really go into this with a theme of something that you halfway care about, because that's not how themes work at all. Like even in literature, the author can't be like, yeah, I'm gonna kind of make my my book along this theme. It's you are absolutely going to commit to it one way or the other. It just doesn't. It just has to be something conscious about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I'll get BJ to do one next year. And if not, I think we'll probably check in on mine near the end of the year, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, seriously, if you guys have done this, are doing this, are interested in doing it, let us know on all of the places, because I'd be very curious to hear about that. Of course, you guys can support the podcast. You can go to patreon.com/geek2geekcast and help us out there. Everything there goes right back into the show, right back into the network. And don't forget, we're part of a network. We have podcasts, we have streamers, we have the Geekery blog, all of that and more at geek2geekmedia.com, or to go to geek2geekmedia.com/subscribe. You can get it all sent right to you. And with that, it's probably time for Weekly Geekery, where we share what we've been geeking out about this week. Are you still playing a lot of Animal Crossing?
I am still doing it. I have fallen into the level of I'm now maintaining my stuff. I have my things I want to do, and my goals that I'm working toward, but not so much working on setting everything up from scratch. And so it's nice to feel like they're not chores, but so much a routine now. And I've been playing it a lot, working on villagers. And I don't know if you've read about it. You may have Belgast over at AgroChat, and the Agronaut blog did a post about making your own amiibo. Have you seen that? Have you seen people doing that?
I read his post about it. It was really interesting.
It's really cool. So I decided to do it, and I ordered some of the NFC cards and did it because, like, for those of you who didn't, Nintendo apparently, and this is like the only time I've ever heard of Nintendo doing this with anything, uses an open source NFC, near field communication radio frequency. Like, they don't use a standard that's proprietary or terribly encrypted. Like, they use one that you can buy chips off of Amazon and cards like you would use at a hotel or anything at all, and then you can write to that if you have an NFC writer, which is weird, which is really cool, but you can do it with an Android phone. Like, you can't do it with an iPhone, but you can do it with Android. And I happen to have a Note 8 that no one would ever buy sitting on my desk. So I was like, I can download this app that exists, and then pay just a little bit, like pennies on the dollar, for being able to make Amiibo, or rather buy them off of eBay. And so I decided that I was going to do this, and it's fun. Like, it is. It's a lot of fun to do this. It's like, because you can't buy these Amiibo. Like, you can't go to GameStop. Like, I would have bought packs if I could, like, order them from Target or something, and really had fun getting kind of blind box thing from just packs of Amiibo cards. But it's fun to be able to do this, and I've invited a couple of villagers by doing it a little bit now, and I've invited Anka and Julian, the Egyptian cat, and the unicorn, by doing this week. And it's just been fun being able, like, oh, who do I want next? I can finally get rid of some of the ones I don't really care that much about, and get into having this island that when I'm on and interacting, it looks and feels the way that I want it to, and I can keep playing around with that.
That's super cool.
And I like being able to like be able to make Amiibo and be like, hey. And well, actually, I was about to say, hey, do you want a Legend of Zelda Amiibo? Like, if you need this, like, hard to find ones, you can use it. I also found out that when I was looking stuff up, that Animal Crossing New Leaf, the one on the 3DS, and I wish they would do this in the Switch version, you can use Legend of Zelda Amiibos. with that game. And you can have special Zelda villagers that will actually live in your town. Like, you can get Wolf Link to live in your town.
I remember seeing that.
You can get Ganon as a pig to live in your town. You can get Epona as one of the horse people to live in your town, and they'll talk to you and interact and everything and have Zelda-themed houses. And so, of course, I'm doing this. Like, I am working on getting all of them invited. Like, that was something where I was like, yeah, I'm definitely having Zelda characters live in my Animal Crossing village.
That's awesome.
Like, that's super cool. I wish they would do stuff like that on the Switch with different crossovers eventually. But I also, we started watching Never Have I Ever on Netflix. Have you heard of this or seen it on there?
No, I don't even know what it is.
It's a series that's done by Mindy Kaling and really feels like the To All the Boys I've Loved Before movies, but it's a lot better. It's about a teenage Indian American girl who is falling in love. Not really falling in love. Like, she's trying to hook up with this one dude, and it's just like, it starts out being about that, but kind of this teen romance, but it turns into kind of a navigating Indian American culture in America as well. And it's really cool. Like, it's one of the best TV shows I've seen in a long time. And we binged it. Like, we haven't binged something in a long time, like just like straight through. This one we absolutely did. We didn't realize that it was on the last episode last night when it ended. So I highly, highly, highly recommend the series Never Have I Ever. Y'all should definitely look into it.
Sweet. And you said it's on Netflix?
It's on Netflix. Yeah, it's a Netflix original.
Okay, cool. I don't know. I feel like I've been picking away at a bunch of stuff this last week. Some of it is games that I'm starting to dig into, but I don't have fully formed opinions yet, so I'll bring those back up later, a different week. But one thing I wanted to highlight that's really quick is Piper, which is a short on Disney Plus. And there was a night where I was watching both movies for the Disney Forever podcast, which is another podcast I'm on with Katie from the Podcast Network. And I watched both of them that night, and I ended on Pinocchio. And Pinocchio is kind of a messed up movie, and I forgot how much it was. And it's just like dark and twisted, and that's a different podcast. If you want to hear that one, Disney Forever, it's on all the podcast places. Katie and I talk about Disney stuff every week, so that episode will be coming up. But I couldn't end my night on Pinocchio because it's such like a messed up movie, and it was just too dark to like go to bed right after that, right? And so I just went into the Disney Plus because we were in Disney Plus already. My wife and I went into Disney Plus, and I was just looking at all the shorts they had. I just picked one I hadn't seen before, and it's called Piper, and it's this cute little like 6-minute. It's a sandpiper, and it's adorable. It's fantastic. If you just need a quick little palate cleanser that's like a Pixar short, go watch Piper because it's fantastic.
Is it Pixar or is it just a Disney short on there?
Actually, I don't know. It might be Pixar. It might be Disney. Either way, it's really, really good.
That's really cool. Like, I haven't heard of that one, and we haven't been on YouTube as much as we had in the past because of Animal Crossing, honestly. And so, like, we subscribe to the Pixar channel, so we'll have new shorts and different videos about their shorts pop up. And so it's been a month or so since we've really gone through the daily viewing of the subscription list. So I haven't seen anything about Piper. I'm gonna have to look for this one.
Yeah, it's good. I highly recommend it. And then the other thing I want to talk about was the Clone Wars. So This is one where it's been on my geekery list since this season started. And before season 7 started, which is the final season, and they announced that before it went live, I watched a few select episodes from season 5 and 6 just to refresh myself, because there's a couple key ones near the end there, especially with like Ahsoka, and to just see like how she leaves the Jedi Order. And the first 2 arcs of season 7, so season 7 has 3 arcs in it. The first 2 arcs feel like more Clone Wars, and that's not bad. It's good. Like, Clone Wars is good by the time that you get that far into it.
It does. It's a lot better in the later seasons. Like, the show is good. Like, if you watched it in the beginning, you're like, this is a Star Wars cartoon for kids. Like, it gets really good toward the end.
It does, and it has more story arcs to it that are meaningful instead of like filler episodes and kiddie stuff. It definitely evolves and like levels up as a show as you go season by season, and it goes forward. So The first two arcs here, they feel like more Clone Wars. And like I said, that's not bad. It's fine. Arc 1 is the Bad Batch, and it has like more Anakin development, but the Bad Batch is a bunch of like clones that have kind of specialized abilities because their cloning process went like slightly wrong. And so that one's interesting. And then Arc 2 is Ahsoka right after she leaves the Jedi Order and what happens to her and her first experiences after leaving the Order. So both of those were kind of like good for world building. And like I said, more Clone Wars, right? Not bad, but not like blow you away. Arc 3 is the finale arc, and it's 4 episodes, and it time jumps ahead, and it feels like the last 4 episodes here could be stitched into a movie that's missing from the key Star Wars story.
Wow.
Like, it is like movie quality, without a doubt. It feels like a missing movie from the franchise. It has a different title and a different intro. They made it more like a movie, and it's basically the Siege of Mandalore, and it touches on Darth Maul and Anakin, Obi-Wan. It has Rex, and it has Ahsoka. And it's mostly about Ahsoka, Rex, and Darth Maul, and kind of wrapping up their story in the Clone Wars and getting them ready to move on to what happens after. Because if you've watched Rebels, you know that all of them are alive when it comes to Rebels. So it's more about filling in the gaps there. But this arc, it starts out right before Revenge of the Sith. It leads into Revenge of the Sith, and then it overlaps with Revenge of the Sith. So this 4-part arc, or 4-episode arc, is basically a movie that's a companion movie to Revenge of the Sith. And I think it's better than Revenge of the Sith. It's really, really good. This is some of the best Star Wars that I've seen in years and years. It's fantastic.
I'm excited to see it because, like, I knew that you and I've seen other people talk about the last part of Clone Wars just being amazing. Like, this last arc being great as it's been coming out over the last few weeks. I didn't realize, though, that it was the Siege of Mandalore, that was really the unifying event in it. I knew that you had told me that it paralleled Revenge of the Sith. I didn't realize that the actual, conflict and storyline went around the Siege of Mandalore, which is really super interesting now because of the Mandalorian and them referencing back to it a lot, and now I'm assuming getting to see a little bit more of the stuff that they've referenced in the previous season or previous series, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And you can tell that it's trying to do all of that at the same time. And it's like one of the last major battles of the Clone Wars. And while it's happening, Revenge of the Sith is happening. So the galaxy is changing out there. So like you go into it and it's still the Clone Wars. And by the time you leave it, the galaxy has changed, just like Revenge of the Sith. Except this one is so much better than Revenge of the Sith was.
That sounds fantastic. Like, it makes me actually want to just sit down and watch that without the others right now.
You wouldn't need to watch the others. And that's one of the things that I wanted to call out here is that, like, yes, there's 7 seasons, right? But you could really you could just skip everything and you could start with the last 4 episodes of the last season and you would basically be fine. It might take you a little bit to pick up on a couple of the characters, like if you don't know who Ahsoka is and you don't know who Rex is, but they do a good enough job of establishing those within the first 15 minutes that it's fine. Like, I really think that they might take these 4 episodes and then edit them together and make this a standalone, like, animated movie for Star Wars.
That would be great. Like, that makes me want to watch just those as another movie, because sitting down, and it's still not a really expansive season or anything. It's like, what, 8-10 episodes?
Yeah, I think most of the arcs have 4 episodes, so there's 3 arcs, so it's like 12.
Oh.
Like 12-ish.
That's actually the way wow, that's longer than I thought it was. I didn't realize that it was even 12 episodes.
Yeah.
Like, I really am going to have to sit down and watch this. It's, I still haven't finished Rebels. I still haven't finished the very last episode. And it's like the best episode of the series and stuff I've heard. Like, one of the best episodes they do.
So the other thing I did was after I watched this is I was like, oh, I want to see, like, I remember because I've watched Rebels, what else happens to Ahsoka. But I haven't seen it in a long time. And it's stretched over season 2, 3, and 4. And so I went on YouTube and I was like, somebody's got to have like a good compilation, right? And it turns out that Disney has the best compilation. Like,
really?
Yeah, I was so surprised. Disney XD, which is like, their whatever channel that Rebels was always coming out on. Disney XD has a compilation that's like a 40-minute cut of every Ahsoka scene that just flows right into one another. And it's really good. like that 40-minute cut of Ahsoka is basically every single time that she is in Rebels, and it might be my favorite Rebels episode, even though it doesn't exist as a real episode.
That would be great. Like, I love Ahsoka in the Rebels. I love Ahsoka in Rebels. Like, that sounds fantastic just to have it all put together like that.
It's good, and it's official, and it's on Disney's channel on YouTube. So yeah, you can go watch that too.
I very well might.
Yeah, so I had a good Star Wars week here. It was really good. I'm excited to see Ahsoka in the next season of The Mandalorian too. Like, I got to see what they do with her.
Like, I'm very curious about that because I didn't expect it. I really did not expect them to bring Ahsoka into the live action post. I can't even remember, like, post original trilogy content. Like, I thought they were really going to leave her in the before time in the in the prequel stuff. But so it's really interesting to me to see what they're going to do with Ahsoka as a full adult, and honestly with somebody else playing her. That her not having the same voice is going to be very throwing. And I love Rosario Dawson, but it's going to be really hard to latch onto at first because even the novel was read by Ashley Eckstein.
Yeah, at this point, Ahsoka is probably my favorite Star Wars character. I don't think anybody else beats her out. Like, yeah, she's my favorite. So it was so good. It's just fantastic Star Wars at its best. Those last 4 episodes of season 7 of Clone Wars. So yeah, it was a good week. That's probably it for us for this week. You guys can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have great discussions on Slack, Discord, and Reddit.
You can go to geek2geekmedia.com for invite links, and while you're there, you can check out all of the other great content on the network.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, and you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter. I'm also on the Disney Forever podcast, where we watch and react to a different Disney movie every week.
I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's, and you can listen to me even more on the Dragon Quest FM podcast, which is about the Dragon Quest series of RPGs.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Bye, y'all.